Next, we heard from Corporal Wallace. This is the witness who compiled all of the surveillance in this case. He headed up the task force of people that went from business to business, from residence to residence, to collect every piece of possible surveillance that they could find in this case so that they could attempt to connect Mario Fernandez to the homicide of Jared Bridegan. And he told you just how carefully he had done that. And they had, on direct examination, they had asked him, well, what do you convert times to make sure everything lines up? Yes, I took great care to do that. I added up times. I subtracted UTC to format it so everyone could get a good idea what's happening. And of course, the video was wrong. First question I asked him, sir, you said that you took great care and precision to do this. Do you think precision is important? Yes, I do. You think accuracy is important? Yes, I do. You agree with me that this video is incorrect? Yes, it's wrong. Well, what's wrong? Is it not the truck that's pulling out, or is it the time? It's the time. On the video, if you recall, before I got up on cross-examination, it looked like the truck pulls out, and then they show a map, and then they showed it on a fairway. But it wasn't until we got up. There's 36 minutes that we had to tell you, you have no idea where that blue truck is prior to the homicide. When that truck pulls out of Pablo Hamlet for 36 minutes, you don't know where it is. And then I went out of my way to say, okay, well, the state's alleging that there's no surveillance at a gravel parking lot. Were there any reports that a vehicle was in that gravel parking lot? No, sir. You had mentioned that there's a long street along the golf course where there's no surveillance. You had mentioned that that's a busy road at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night. That's 15th. That's right. Did you get one report, one Crime Stopper tip, any information that a Ford F-150 that's been blasted on the internet and the news was just randomly parked along that way? No, no information. So this whole time, the government gets up here and they're like, Mr. Fernandez didn't report the F-150. Mr. Fernandez didn't report the F-150. Nobody reported the F-150. Jimmy Jones, where the truck was found, didn't report an F-150. It's because there are thousands of F-150s, and the surveillance really wasn't all that clear that was released to the media. But there is no evidence that in this case, a truck, an F-150, two-toned in color, on the night of the homicide was anywhere near the Fernandez residence, anywhere parked on the roadway, and certainly not at the Cradle Creek Preserve. They just throw these things out there, and they expect you to say, well, it could have been. Now, it's interesting. When they want to do could have beens, they say you can't do that. The jury instruction is going to tell you it's not a forced doubt, it's not a speculative doubt, it's not an imaginary doubt, until they want you to fill in the gaps of the evidence and say there's a blue truck parked at a gravel parking lot. No evidence of that whatsoever. They just want you to believe that without ever giving you a single piece of evidence that that's true. Today, in the beginning of Ms. Stifler's opening statement, she said, you can believe that, and you can believe that. She was like Oprah Winfrey handing out vehicles. You get a car, you get a car. It's not how it works. It's not you get to believe this, you get to believe that. We have evidence. That's what all of this is. They spent 6 days trying to establish that Mr. Fernandez participated in this crime, and that's what you have to know. You have to know, or at least be presented with something so that you could believe that during that 36-minute period of time, Mr. Fernandez had something to do with this crime. But the answer is they just don't know. They have no idea where that truck was. They have no idea who was in that truck. And they just want you to guess or fill in the gaps in your mind. Ms. Stifler told you very on in her opening statement this morning, you can use reasonable inferences. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to read a lot of law to you, and when I'm done and Mr. Mizrahi's done, the judge is going to read you a bunch of jury instructions. You listen. See if you ever hear the word, you can take and use reasonable inferences. See if you ever hear that this afternoon, because I submit to you, you will not. You will never hear the judge say, yeah, you can just do reasonable inferences and jump from fact to fact. That is not something that you're going to hear. That's just something that they told you because they want you to do that because they didn't meet their burden in this case. The next, and I wasn't trying to be a stickler about all the little mistakes in this case, but my client is charged with first-degree murder, which is the highest crime that you can be charged with in this country. So when they make all the mistakes about the times that we have to point out, and it's in evidence, and when you look at the CD, it says, State of Florida, State v. Tenon Gardner, Fernandez. They don't even get his name right. And is that the biggest deal in the world? No, but it's one mistake after the next mistake that we have to keep pointing out to you because the government was careless. They're not taking the time to make sure that in this case, all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and that they have their evidence in order. It's just one mistake after the next. And then it shows, after we corrected it, that it's 8 o'clock when the truck pulls off. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Pablo Hamlet is on surveillance. It runs all the time. And they want you to believe that that's the area of interest. But yet, you never see Mr. Fernandez at Pablo Hamlet. You never see a person running from his residence to the Ford F-150, from the Ford F-150 back to the residence. No evidence of that. So what does the government do when they have absolutely no evidence that Mr. Fernandez ever gets to that truck or ever gets back to his home or goes back from his home back to the truck? I mean, let's just talk about it. What they're telling you is, and we'll get to his phone, trust me, but his phone goes off, then his phone goes back on, then she wants you to believe that there's a second gap, his phone goes off, his phone goes back on. He's home. But if you want to believe what the government's trying to convince you to believe, he has to be running all around Jack's Beach. Detective Johns told you that when the phones finally connect, one phone pings over by Mojo's. The other phone is over by the police station where Henry Tenon is. They want you to believe it's Mario Fernandez who's over there by Mojo's, and somehow, like a ghost in the night, he never is seen. So think about what they keep asking you to do. In that video, when the truck pulls off, all of a sudden Detective Johns is like, it pulled into a gravel lot. And I said, you can't even see in that video the vehicle stop. And he's like, no, you can't. So what makes you think it stopped? He just told you. I think it stopped, even though I asked him right on the stand, you acknowledge that you can't see that video stop. That's correct. You have any evidence that it ever stopped there? No. He just wants you to believe it because that's something you'd have to imagine because he wants it to be true because it's nowhere else. Go back. I asked them what no criminal defense attorney ever does. You ask questions you know the answers to. And I looked at him and I said, tell me, after that truck pulls off, you believe it doesn't leave for hours. Where does the truck go? What did he tell you? I don't know. I think it pulled into a lot. There is no evidence of Mr. Fernandez out and about, the blue truck, for approximately 3 hours after you last see that truck pull out of Pablo Hamlet when it just backs up, turns around, and pulls forward. So like we said, there's no surveillance. I showed a video, if you recall, of the truck passing a sidewalk by the police station. And I said, count how many people are on the sidewalk. And it was 7. 7 people in that one clip were right next to that truck. And not a single person reports seeing Mr. Fernandez, a person who's been blasted all over the news and the media, saying, I saw him that night. He was in that truck. Not a single person. This is 7 o'clock at Jack's Beach. This isn't a time period where it's in the middle of the night and no one would see him. And then I showed you all what area they had pulled into. Mr. Fernandez is going to be running from his home across Discovery School back to a truck at the area of interest, and it's not caught on surveillance. It's not seen. He's not seen by any one of the people in the 40 or 50 windows that are in just that building in the smokers pavilion. Do you remember when I asked the detective about Corporal Wallace about that smoking pavilion? And I said, it was 7 o'clock at night. Not a single person in an area where people congregate and smoke, which is, 30 feet from where the car was parked? And he said, oh, I don't think people smoke at night. Have you ever met a smoker? Do they stop smoking at 6 o'clock? That's what they're trying to do. When they cannot give you evidence or an answer in this case, they just say whatever they want, including smokers stop smoking at around 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And you have to ask yourself, how credible is that if someone's willing to tell me something we know just isn't true? Am I to rely on this kind of evidence to convict Mr. Fernandez of first-degree murder? That's for you to decide. And then he collected so much, if you go back, so much surveillance that they caught, in this video it's really small, but it's all there, back there in evidence, and every witness agreed. When Mrs. Bridegan pulls into the police station, you can see Henry Tenon in the same frame of Mrs. Bridegan pulling into the police station. If you stop it, you can see Henry Tenon on the sidewalk, and you can see Miss Bridegan's vehicle. And I'm not suggesting to you that that's some fact that you should believe that Miss Bridegan is involved. I'm not. But ask yourselves this. If they had Henry Tenon and Mario Fernandez in the same frame on the night of the homicide, how many times would they play that for you? They would say that is all the evidence that you need. And they collected so much surveillance that they actually got the killer and the widow in the same frame on the night of the homicide, and they can't show you one piece of evidence that connects Mario Fernandez on the night of the homicide to the crime scene, to the truck, to the route, to a gravel lot, to the Cradle Creek Preserve. Nothing, except for that Mario Fernandez is at his house. That's how much surveillance the government collected in this case. And then they want you just to believe it's just chance